everyone, it's Margaret Manning here. Welcome to 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. And my guest today is Chef AJ. Chef AJ is a chef and a culinary instructor in Los Angeles, California. And she's also a speaker and an author. She has written a book called Unprocessed, which is fabulous. And she teaches a lifestyle program called the Ultimate Weight Loss Program. And her goal is to really help women achieve vibrant health and their great ideal weight. So welcome to the show, AJ.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's great to have you here. We have a community of women over 60. And a lot of them are thinking about good health, as we've talked about before. But one of the things that's on people's minds is weight. You know, as you get older, I mean, we can blame it on metabolism or whatever else we want to say is going on. But we just are concerned about at least getting our diet right. So we've talked in another video about your program and your own journey, but you talked about caloric or calorie density as being one of the key platforms for a weight loss program. Well, any age, but over 60. So tell us more about what that is, calorie density.
So, exactly. So the foundation of the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, which, by the way, I didn't make up caloric density. I learned it from many of the people that have come before me on whose shoulders I stand, so that I might do this work. First and foremost is one of my mentors, Dr. John McDougall, who I mentioned on the last recording. And he has a website, drmcdougall.com, and he wrote the book, The Starch Solution, which explains why starch is the healthiest thing to eat. But the book that I learned the most from was a book that was a bestseller in 1985 and still is today, and it's called The McDougall Program for Maximum Waist Loss. Not weight loss, but weight loss.
It could be waist loss.
Exactly. It's based on the principles of calorie density. Now, Dr. Dean Ornish, who most people are familiar with, successfully reversed heart disease with a low-fat plant-based diet, wrote another bestseller in 1980 called Eat More, Weigh Less. And when you truly understand caloric density, you can eat twice as much food, yet take in half as many calories. And a researcher at Penn State University, who I had the privilege of interviewing, Dr. Barbara Rolls, wrote a series of best-selling books called Volumetrics, based on the principles of calorie density. And so one of the best ways I can maybe describe calorie density.
Yep, we can see that.
Can you see that?
I can see a stomach. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so 3 different stomachs. So our stomachs are about the size of a cantaloupe. They hold about a liter of food, which is about 4.22 cups of food. And in order for us to feel full, satiated, the end of hunger, we need to satisfy what's known as the mechanisms of satiation, which are the stretch receptors, the nutrient receptors, and the calorie receptors. So in other words, if you think of our stomach as like a tank, in order to feel full, that tank has to feel full. We have to activate those stretch receptors. Well, the thing is if you eat foods at high caloric densities, like oils, like nuts, like animal products, like sugars and flours. Well, the thing is these foods are high caloric density, which means that a little bit takes up a little space. So you need a lot of these calories to feel full. If you eat foods which are known as calorie dilute foods, foods of a low caloric density, and let me show you, see if this helps at all, if you can see this.
Okay, maybe we can actually, is there a link to this on your website perhaps? We could point people there.
I can look, and this is basically a refrigerator magnet, but if you eat what's calorically dilute foods, like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, which have a caloric density of 600 calories per pound or less, you can eat way more of these foods. So you can feel full on fewer calories. So the stomach on the left is a stomach full of 400 calories of oil. And you can see that it doesn't fill the stomach up at all. So there's no way it can activate those stretch receptors because oil has pretty much zero nutrients. It won't activate the nutrient receptors. Well, the stomach in the middle has chicken, but it could have cheese or any other kind of animal product. And it fills up the stomach a little bit more than the oil, but the stomach is still basically empty on 400 calories of animal products. And remember, I told you the last time we spoke is that at least in America, they eat over 92% of their calories from animal. But the stomach on the right reflects the way I've eaten the last 40 years, which are fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And when I eat calories of beans or rice or fruit or vegetables, well, my stomach gets really, really full on 400 calories, and I can do that 3 or 4 times a day.
Okay, let's see your pretty
feel
face again.
Completely stuffed, and that's kind of what caloric density is.
Okay, so let me so I understand. You said there were 3 different things that determine how full you feel, right? So now, if you eat just animal fat, for example, does that not make you? Mm-hmm. So is there like, for example, if you eat animals, should you eat something else with it, or should you? That seems
absolutely. Well, here, let me just explain one thing. I probably should have said this first.
Yeah.
And this is not like a moral judgment of people that eat animal products or processed food, but what you have to understand is that one of the things that animal products and processed food have in common, and it doesn't matter what it is, I could take a white chicken breast and a white bagel. I see the same thing. These are foods that have no fiber. Animal products, it doesn't matter what animal product it is. Okay. There is zero fiber in animal products. It doesn't matter what the processed food is. There is zero fiber in processed food. And that is the problem. There's a well-known doctor named Dr. Dennis Burkitt who used to say, America is a constipated nation. If you pass small stools, you need large hospitals. And the reason this is so is because if you're eating 92 to 93% of your calories from animal products and processed food, you're not eating fiber. Okay. I eat over 100 grams of fiber a day. All the food I eat, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, have fiber. Right. Now, first of all, fiber is important. I need to say this.
No, go ahead.
This is so important. Fiber is important to every bodily process. It not only flushes out toxins, but it helps prevent certain cancers. But what you have to understand where weight loss is concerned is the only way you're going to feel full in general and feel full on fewer calories in particular is if the food you're eating contains fiber. Yeah. Animal products has no fiber. Oil has no fiber. Sugar and flour, no. You have foods that contain their fiber intact, and they also contain their water intact. When you have fiber plus water, you create what's known as bulk, and bulk is what creates satiety, that feeling to stop eating. And so that's why even though nuts have fiber, it's very low bulk. There's very little water. There's not a lot of volume there. Right. Dried fruit is not that unhealthy compared to sugar. But if you take apples, for example, or grapes, both 200 calories a pound, you dehydrate or dry them into raisins or apple rings, you've taken out the water. Now, instead of 200 calories a pound, they're 1,300 calories a pound. They're more than more than 6 times as calorically dense. So you want to make sure that the fiber is intact and the water is intact, because fiber plus water creates bulk, and that's what
fills you up.
What makes you satiety to get you to stop. And fewer calories and sooner. And so that's why things like fruits and vegetables are so wonderful for weight loss, because they're mostly water. There could be as much as 97% water. But again, if you're eating most of your calories from animal products and processed foods like oils, you're just not getting any fiber. You're never going to be full on a basically fiberless diet.
Well, this is really, really good advice. And I think the one thing about you, JJ, is that you're actually challenging some of the stereotypes or some of the basic belief systems that people have about how to eat. Now, for example, right now, we talked about this earlier, there's a big fad around oil. People are eating coconut oil. Olive oil is supposed to be wonderful for you. And, what you're saying is, yes, and there's a value to having those, but not to the extreme, because in that picture you showed, they don't do anything to fill you up. And you're not going to lose weight if you don't eat less calories. It's just, that's how it works, right? So,
there's a wonderful documentary that if you get it in your country, it just came out. There was one done in the United States in 2011 called Forks Over Knives, which I would recommend to all your viewers. But a new one came out called Eating You Alive, on the same subject of eating for health and reversing and preventing diseases. And they were talking about coconut oil. And one of the doctors, Evan Allen from Las Vegas, said, the only miracle about coconut oil is that it's still being sold. You see, coconut oil is 92% saturated fat, which has more saturated fat than lard. And I would encourage your viewers to either read Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn, or at least watch the movie Forks Over Knives, so that they could understand that even if it was, first of all, it's deplorable for weight loss. It's 4,000 calories a pound, but it is not a health food. It injures our endothelial cells, which line all of our blood vessels, which are the life jacket of our circulatory system. It's just, that is a myth. It is a triumph of marketing over science. But even if Oh,
no, I
sorry.
was just going to say, I think that there's a lot of discussion, though, about the fact that, I'm not an expert in this at all, I'm repeating what I have read and heard, that if you can get your body to be feeding off of fat rather than off of glucose and sugar, that you actually, it's a ketosis diet that everybody is very into these days. Well, not everybody,
Yeah.
but a lot of people are following, because they believe that as long as you're feeding off of sugar, that's the bad thing. You want to be having your body getting its energy off of fat. So how would you respond to that, just briefly?
Well, because I'm not a medical doctor, it almost doesn't matter what I'd say, because people are going to listen to the medical doctors that tout these diets.
Awesome.
I would really recommend that you interview one of these wonderful medical doctors in this format so they can explain to you that. I don't believe that it's true. I know that I've worked with 2,000 people that don't eat oil, and they've all lost weight easily. I work with actresses and models in Los Angeles that don't necessarily want to stop the animal products, but anytime you stop oil, you lose weight. I want to give you an example, and this might help.
Okay.
So my husband is 6 feet tall, and he was 160 pounds when I married him, and he was still very lean. When I heard Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn of the Cleveland Clinic speak, and by the way, he is the reason that Bill Clinton adopted a plant-based diet without oil because of this fine doctor, and you could probably find YouTube clips of him talking about that.
Is he in Dallas?
He is in Cleveland. Dr. Esselstyn is in Cleveland Clinic.
Okay.
He runs a disease reversal program there. Okay. And he was actually the first guest on my television show, Healthy Living with Chef AJ, which at least airs in the United States, but they could probably find it on YouTube, your viewers. So when I heard him speak about sugar, oil, and salt being deleterious to our health, on August 1st, 2008, I stopped eating sugar, oil, and salt completely. And since I'm the main cook in the family, I'm the only cook. I make my husband's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and I send him to lunch with him. I didn't mention to him that we were making this change. I was a chef. It was very easy to stop oil. He didn't notice. It didn't make the food taste different. It probably made it taste better. Right. Well, 7 months after we stopped oil, we had to go to a bar mitzvah. And my husband generally doesn't wear a belt because, he doesn't. But he was wearing a suit, so he went to put his one belt on, and all of a sudden there was no more holes. He couldn't put it on. He goes, oh my God, we didn't own a scale at the time. We went out and bought one. He goes, oh my God, I must have cancer. I've lost so much weight. I can't get this belt on. Well, we got a scale, and in 7 months of not eating oil, he lost 18 pounds. He didn't know that I made this change in his diet. Now, if not eating oil could have someone that didn't need to lose weight, that didn't want to lose weight, that didn't even know they were a subject of a medical experiment, could lose 18 pounds. Imagine what you could do if you did it on purpose. And I work with these models and actresses that are already lean, but because of the way show business is, they have to be 10 pounds leaner. We take away the oil. Guess what happens? They all lose weight. Dr. John McDougall's been saying for 40 years, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. And I would counter that if these diets worked, if eating oil worked, why are, at least I can only quote statistics from the United States, that's where I'm at, why are over 75% of Americans who are eating oil and animal products overweight, and more than half of those that are obese?
Yeah, I think that's all of it. I think what they would say is that the ketosis diet, for example, which is focused completely on eating fats they cut out the carbohydrates. I think where people do both, that's where the problem arises, where they eat a lot of fat, but they also eat a lot of carbohydrates and starches and other things.
Absolutely.
So, but if you just went purely with fat, which is probably not an ideal diet for any person, it's just another way of looking at weight loss. But it sounds like you've got, as you said, you've got women you've worked with over the years, and you've got this ultimate weight loss program that I would encourage people to go and check out on your website, because you do it online, and if you have the pleasure to be in LA, you can actually you have them live in person. Right. But this has been a really interesting conversation, and I think it's one of those that you could go to extremes on both sides. But did you have something that you wanted to say? I
did, because what I want people to understand that they need to actually learn this nutritional science, that protein and carbohydrate have 4 calories a gram. Alcohol has 7 calories a gram, and oil has 9 calories a gram. Fat is more than twice as calorically dense. You are never going to feel full eating fat. And eating a diet of fat is just not satisfying. Eating a diet like I do, where I get to eat 2 pounds of sweet potatoes for lunch, is extremely satisfying. If it works for you, go ahead, but it's still not a health promoting diet. So I would encourage them to look at this. Also, what you have to understand is that when you eat fat, it takes only 3% of the calories in the dietary fat for it to get stored as body fat. Whereas it is very, very difficult for human beings to convert an excess calories from carbohydrates to body fat. That's something known as de novo lipogenesis, which pigs can readily do, but human beings cannot do except in the presence of extraordinary over caloric consumption. Because what happens is if we eat an extra sweet potato, assuming we're not putting oil on it or animal products, what happens is those extra calories get burned as heat, escaping through the top of the head, through the fidget factor, or stored invisibly in the muscles or the liver as glycogen. And so carbs don't make you fat if you don't put fat on them. Fat makes you fat. And the only way I can convince somebody to do it is to do an experiment for 30 days. Right. Just try eating like me for 30 days. If you're not happy and slim, then you can go back to eating all the animal fat and oil you want. But to me, it's a disgusting diet.
You are super compelling. I'm going to try it maybe. But here's the thing. This may be completely off the wall question, but is there any relationship between eating fat and those products you talked about, the nuts and so on, to do with stomach belly fat? Because a lot of women over 60 have this problem, and it seems like you can't do anything about it. It's just where it lands.
Well, I would really encourage you to interview Dr. John McDougall. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. If you don't eat fat, you can't wear fat. Look at the cultures. Look at what they call the Yanomama Indians that don't eat any oil. Look at the cultures that don't eat fat and look how slim they are. Fat makes you fat. Don't believe me? Stop eating it for 21 days. They could take a syringe in that belly fat and find out, is it fat from salmon? Is it fat from nuts? If you don't want to be fat, don't eat fat.
But is there not something to do with hormones as you get a little older?
That I don't know, but I'm getting older too. I'm not quite 60. I'll be 60 in a few years, and I've never been leaner in my life. It's the food, guys. It's the food. I mean, hormones can contribute, but at the end of the day, it's what you put in your mouth.
Okay. AJ, I'm convinced, and I'm actually looking forward to the next interview because we're going to talk about the specific foods that people can eat, and there's some that are going to surprise you. So thank you again for your time, for your insight. It's wonderful to learn all of this, and I really appreciate you being here. Thanks again. Take care. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our 60andMe YouTube channel and also visit our website. We are a strong and dynamic community of women over 60. We're challenging aging stereotypes, and every day we share fascinating stories, interesting questions, and great conversation.